Okay, hey guys, Anime West Reviews here. We're back with Owari no Seraph, chapter 78. It has been, believe, at least 2 months because it went on break for a month. But yeah, so the last chapter we had ended off with Ashera saying that his memories are coming back to him. And so yeah, that's where this one begins. And so this chapter is titled The Dark Ages of Greece. So we know where he's from now. So what he remembers is he finally remembered that he has a sister. So he's starting to remember Cruel. And so we go back into the flashback that we saw a few chapters ago, I think it was, where the first progenitor had shown up with you, and the slave trader was telling Ashera that he has a buyer. And so then Shikima Doji is what I'm going to be calling him for now, because don't get his name at the moment, but he tells you to take off his chains. And so then he asks this little kid version of you if he was bought by him too. And you is weird. Because he says, I don't know, was I bought? Asking him that. And so yeah, Ashera or Ashera, he's just like, I was asking you that. And so his reply is, I don't know, I don't remember anything. And so we get Shikima Doji's name at the moment, which is apparently Sagama. And so you ask him if he was bought, and he just says, that's a good question. And so you're just like, looks like he doesn't know either. Guess that means it's possible I was. And so, yeah, sure, it's just kind of like, really? He's so weird. Because he is. And then Sagama says, well, let's be off. And so they proceed to leave. The slave guy hits Ashera because he's moving too slowly. Says, when he says move, you move. That nobleman pays well, you know. Don't you dare ruin my rep for well-behaved merchandise. And so they go into the city. Ashera is then kind of thinking, oh, even though I'm a slave now, the sun hasn't really dimmed at all. So basically, even though I'm a slave now, the world keeps moving, basically. So we see them walking through this, I guess it's city or town, and then see some slaves getting hit, and then Ashera's thinking, uh-oh, it looks like my life is about to get a lot rougher, because he sees these slave children getting hit and stuff, and then he sees this little girl makes him think of Cruel, so he says, crap, Cruel. I don't know why the girl looks a lot like Barrett. Strange. And so then Sagama turns around and looks at Ashera, asks him if he's hungry and whether he would like something to eat. So he's like, and then his stomach growls, and then Yu says, I'm really, really hungry. And so yeah, Sagama's just like, what? But you just ate not too long ago. In fact, you say, I guess it meant say, or yeah, it's a didn't you say you'd eaten so much you felt like you'd pop? And then he's like, yeah, I did, but I'm hungry again. Why is that? What's happening? And so then Sagama's just like, well, maybe you're hitting a growth spurt. And then you ask what that is. He says, it means you're going to get bigger. And then Yu's just like, ooh, does that mean I'll get to be big like you? And then Sagama says, my response this time is actually rather cute. Though I'm afraid I can't say how big how big you will, and then Ashera starts yelling, I'm hungry, really, really hungry, and then he just laughs and says, well then, and then he's like, Ashera, we're having lunch, come with me. So Ashera's just like, yes, master. And so then we see Ashera and you just really chowing down. And then Sagan was just kind of looking at them, asked him if it's good, and I can't understand what he says. He says, like, yeah, something. I don't know what. I'm not even trying. It's like, it's something. Oof. Wowie. I don't know. That's what it says. Oh, I think it says it's very. And so, yeah, then I guess, yeah, Shara doing something, and then he tells Sagama he's sorry. So he says, I'm sorry, master. I was really hungry, and then Sagama says, you hold your spoon very nicely. I hear you used to be nobility. And then he kind of looks down, and then Sagama just says, now, you needn't look so glum. I will not mistreat you terribly or anything. Yeah, I don't know why that sounds off. And he says, I bought you to be a houseboy. And then, yeah, Ashera, he kind of like thanks a houseboy, but doesn't that mean? And then you drops his plate, falls over, and says the same thing. Like, I guess what Sagama said. You said earlier, which is, my tummy hurts. I'm gonna pop. And he said, I ate way too much. And Sagama's like, here we go again. And then he's like, ooh, but do you think I've gotten bigger now? That's you. And then Sagama's saying, I think overeating is actually bad for one's health. And then you was like, what? Then did I get smaller? And then Sagama says, no, I don't believe you have. Then did I get bigger? And then he asks Ashera if he is done or if he's finished. And you is yelling, hey, don't ignore me. And Ashera says, oh yes, master, thank you. I have had my fill. And so then, yeah, he says that have you had your fill as well? He says can't eat another bite, and then Sagama says, well then let's go home. So as they're walking through the street, you have Ashera talking to you, and he says, say you. And then you turns around and is like, huh, how do you know my name? And he's like, he seems really like absent-minded is how he seems here. So Ashera's like, well, because I heard Master call you that. And then he's like, oh right. That means your name is Ashera. And he's like, huh, yeah. And then he like points to himself like that. And then Ashera's like, what does that mean? And so you says, you were really surprised just now, right? Because you didn't know how I knew your name. And so it looks like he's like pointing at himself or something, and he says, Ashera's like, what is this? I'm confused. Oh, you want me to ask, right? How did you know my name? And then you says, because that's what Siga Madu called you. I heard him. Or I heard him. And then Ashera's like, oh. And you says, I heard him with my own ears. Well, aren't I amazing? And it's like, yes, you are. And then this entire time, like, his eyes are strange. They're just kind of like glazed over the whole time. Kind of like he's not conscious or something. Like, no, in anime, when characters are like unconscious, their eyes are just kind of blank. That's how his eyes look here. And so, yeah. But continuing on with the chapter, Ashera says, "So, you," and then he's like, "Huh." And he asks him, what kind of duties does he normally have? And then Yu's just like, "What do you mean?" And then he says, or Ashera says, "What do you do between waking up and going to sleep?" And then Yu just says, "Well, I eat." And he's like, "Okay." He tells me to go read, so I read, then I play. And Ashera's like, "Okay." And then he's like, "Then I eat again, and when I get tired, I go to sleep." And so he's like, "Huh, but that sounds like you just play all day." And he's like, "Oh, I guess I do then." And then he asks, "But aren't you a slave?" And then he's like, "What's a slave?" And so yeah, Ashera just kind of gets fed up, and she's like, "Never mind then." But he says, one last question. That slave dealer said, "Master pays well. Does that mean what I think it does?" Does Master buy child slaves a lot? And then he's like, "Huh, I don't know." And then he pretty much says, "What about night? Does he summon you at night at all?" Which is kind of creepy. And he's like, "Huh, to where? Where? Well, to his chamber." And then you kind of like thinks about it. And he's like, "Yeah, he does do that." Just sometimes, though. And then Cher looks down very kind of grimly, and then he says, "Oh." And then he kind of has this thoughts where he says, "Master's bought a lot of child slaves before, enough to be a regular at the slave dealers, and if he's buying children that often, that means that the ones he buys die so quickly he needs to get more." So they finally seem to reach the master's or Sigama's like estate or where he's staying. We see, I guess, Shara changing clothes or something, and then Yu is asking him if he says, "Aren't you gonna play?" And then yeah, he's just like, "Sorry, I'm not in the mood to." And then Yu's just like, "Really? But this is lots of fun." And then the sheriff's just like, "I don't know how we're supposed to play together." And then Yu's just like, "Huh, you just go roar." He has like this snake toy. And so yeah, then Cher's like, "Wow, that that is so fun." And so you have one of them yelling "roar," and he's like, "Okay, I get it." Or Cher's like, "Okay, okay, I get it. When I get a little more used to life here, I'll play with you." And then Yu yells, "Really?" And then Cher's like, "Yeah, really. I will, provided Master decides he likes me and I survive." And so then it's nighttime. We have Cher kind of just sitting in his room, and then someone in a hood kind of just says, "Ashera, Master has summoned you." And he says, "Yes, sir." And then he's told he awaits you in the room down the hall. And so Ashera moves along. He's thinking, is there a point? Is there a reason to do even this just to survive? And he's got like tears in his eyes, and he's thinking, "Mother, I'm scared. I wish that day I'd gone to have one last meal with you." And then he's like thinking of Cruel. But then he's just like, he wipes his tears away. He's like, "No, I can't cry. Cruel might still be alive somewhere out there. She might be waiting for me to rescue her then." And he looks up like determined and says, "I have to make sure I live." So he gets to the room, and then you hear this like og, or like a scream or a groan, I guess. And then he's like knocking on the door. Says, "Master, it's Ashera. Might I come in?" And then when he goes in, he says, "Pardon me," and he sees you kind of just standing there looking at the window. And then he's like, "Huh, you?" And then you start screaming, and then we see Yu's wings. And then Ashera just, the chapter ends off with Ashera being like, "What?" We actually got to see use like Seraph wings this time rather than the things we've been seeing in the other chapters or in the current in the present, basically, where he has like the black wings. This time he has the normal Seraph wings. So clearly something happens between this point and that point that causes its wings to like fall off or something. But yeah, I thought it was a great chapter. Hope you all enjoyed it or enjoyed the review. If you did, then make sure to leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, share the video, all that stuff. Let's try to get this to at least 5 likes. But yeah, that's all I really got for this one. Links down below to the Patreon and the Discord. Join the Discord if you have anything you would like to talk to me about or anything. Or just to chat about anime in general and manga and stuff. And yeah, that's all I got. So